What's up, guys? Today we're going to talk about one thing and one thing only: knives. Let's get into it. Okay, so there is a humongous world out there of knives. There's everything from skinners and survival, bushcraft knives, pocket knives. The absolute amount of knives out there is practically endless. But today we're going to talk about some very specific knives, mainly in the survival and bushcraft kind of realm. And I want to show you kind of my personal knives that I use, which ones I prefer, why I prefer them, and for those that are just starting out in the whole bushcraft world, maybe some recommendations on what you should possibly look for in a knife. So to start off, everyone knows about pocket knives. Lots of people carry them. Lots of people just have tons of them, and then there's ones that they prefer. Myself, I do carry a knife with me every day, but it's changed recently. I used to carry a very specific knife, but I have recently changed that. We'll get into that a little bit later. But this knife here is kind of your typical grandfather type knife, pocket knife. It's just got a folding blade. This specific one is a Guidesman. I don't believe I've actually heard of the company before I got this knife. It's got wooden scales on it, and scales are what they call the handle of a knife. It's got little brass pins and brass accoutrements on it, and it's got 3 blades. It's kind of got your typical like drop point knife blade, and a couple other ones. These are cool and all, but this is not something that you would want to have to kind of stake your life on in a bushcraft situation. So these are nice to have in your pocket if you're going to do a little bit of whittling. Just remember, when you do push down on the blade, it does fold. And in this case, if you get to a certain spot, it will just snap in. And if your fingers are there, better bring some Band-Aids. The next knife that I have, I actually got for Christmas in like a Walmart pack. It's a pretty, cool Walmart knife. I've never actually carried it. I actually keep it in my car because it's more directed towards car survival or safety. And that is this the Sheffield knife. And it's a folding knife, and it's got, kind of just a standard, quite dull blade on it. But the reason why I keep it in my car is because right there, it actually has a seatbelt cutter, and then on the back it has a window breaker. So if you're trapped in your car for whatever reason, you can cut your seatbelt, you can bust the window safely, and you can get out. This knife, I wouldn't stake my life on at all. It's fine, for what it is, but it's not really a good quality knife when you're looking at bushcraft or everyday carry. You want something of quality. So that leads me to my next knife. This was the knife that I carried for the longest time in my pocket. It was with me every day. I would always have it in my pocket. And I really, really like this knife. It's got a double safety feature on it. It's made by a really good knife company, but I've kind of evolved away from that. But this is the CRKT. I always get the letters mixed up. This is the M16 13Z. It's got the serrations right here, and then it's got a regular blade on it. It has 2 different safety mechanisms. It's a liner lock, but in order to actually engage the liner lock, to unlock it, you have to hit this little safety button right there, and then hit the liner lock and that will fold it. Very nice knife, very comfortable, good quality. You know, it's a nice knife and it's come in handy. I've kind of moved away from it, one, because I like my current everyday carry knife, if you will, but also because I don't really see a need for the serrations. The only time I ever used serrations was to cut a piece of string or something, and if your knife is sharp, you don't need serrations to cut string, you just use the blade itself. And they're kind of a pain in the butt to sharpen, and it actually makes this kind of difficult to sharpen too, because you're focusing so much on not messing these up. So I don't use that knife anymore. Now, one Christmas I got another knife, and it was the knife that I wanted, or at least one of them. I had actually asked for either the Les Stroud survival knife, the Camillus, I forget the model, but it was Les Stroud's version of the survival knife, or the Gerber Bear Grylls survival knife. I would prefer the Les Stroud just because Bear Grylls is, he drinks his own pee when you don't need to. That's another story. But I ended up getting the Gerber Bear Grylls knife, this one right here. It's actually a really, really cool knife, you know, considering. Comes in this little, like, this plasticky, rubberized kind of locking sheath, but with nylon backing. There's instructions on the back on how to signal planes. It's got a fire steel built into the handle, and if you take off the straps, it's got a knife sharpener right there. You know, this thing, I've used it quite a bit. It's a pretty good knife. It's got a pommel on the back so you can hammer if you need to. The knife itself is that right there. It's got some holes here. You would think those are just for lanyards, but that's actually for, you know, making a spear. Again, it's got serrations. There is a model that does not have serrations. I would prefer that one now, but before I wanted the one with serrations because I thought it was just kind of a bonus feature, but like I said, I've moved away from it. It's a good knife. It's got a good grip on it. You know, it's not a bad knife. If you're doing bushcraft or you're looking into survival, Gerber is a great brand. There's nothing wrong with Gerber. They're made in Oregon, which is where I reside. They make good quality knives. There's nothing wrong with them. However, for the price, and I mean, just carrying around something that says Bear Grylls on it kind of sullies the whole experience. It's also got a little whistle. It's kind of a crappy whistle, but it works. Okay, so next I want to get into the first bushcraft knife that I purchased that I am really, really happy with. It's not my favorite knife, and it's not my favorite knife company. Well, I'll get into that in a minute. But it is a great knife for a great price. I mean, if you are just starting out and you are looking at buying a knife for bushcraft, which is the number one thing you need with bushcraft, you need a knife. You've got to have a knife. Preferably fixed blade. You don't want any of these folders as your primary knife. Have them in your pocket, sure, or in your backpack. But for your primary knife, you really want a belt knife. You want a fixed blade, preferably full tang, but that's a different story and can be debated. And that actually leads me to the knife that I have fallen in love with. It's just an amazing knife. It is the Mora Companion. So Mora knife, it's Mora K-N-I-V, I'm not sure, Knive or Niv or Mora knife, you know, whatever. They make these Mora Companions. I did all this stuff. It's just the case and the knife. I made some adjustments to it. But Mora makes really, really good quality knives. And what's really nice about them is actually the blade quality. They have a proprietary steel. I forget what it's called. I forget the type of steel, but it's their own, you know, blend. These knives come insanely razor sharp. Right out of the dang package, they're ready to go, and they're pretty solidly built. It's an injection molded handle with rubberized grip. It's not a full tang, meaning the piece of metal that the blade is made out of does not run all the way through the knife. It's actually a partial tang and kind of a rat tang. It's kind of strange. It kind of goes to maybe about here, give or take, and is much thinner than the blade itself. With that said, this is a great knife. This knife can carve, this knife can chop, this knife can feather stick, this knife can baton, this knife can do pretty much anything you would need a knife to do. For, I think I paid $15, 15 bucks. It technically comes with a mirror finish on the blade, but I have dipped this blade, because it is carbon, high carbon steel. I dipped it in white vinegar and gave it this kind of patina, which makes this look a little cooler and protects the blade a little bit. I mean, that's really the only reason why you do it. I also made an adjustment to the retention by taking one of my wife's hair ties and double looping it through the handle, which allows you to pull it over and hold it, or even pull both over and hold it really good, and it keeps it nice and snug, even though it does have kind of a good snap of retention, but for added safety. And then I've also taken about 20 feet of paracord and wrapped the handle, you know, in a pinch if I need paracord. I got it right there. Mora, absolutely great knife. I love it for the price. I love it for the sharpness. I love it for the look. I mean, it looks really cool. It's very versatile, super lightweight, you know, because it's not a full tang. These are the best entry-level bushcraft knives you can get, in my opinion. With that said, if I was going out into the bush and I had to stake my life on a knife, I would probably not choose this one. And the main reason for that is because it's not full tang. And I prefer natural materials. I'm kind of a weirdo. I kind of like wood, and I like leather. I like steel, you know. This has steel, obviously, but if I had to really put this thing through its paces, there is a pretty good chance I could break it. Now, I've seen people beat these up and they don't break. With that said, if I really had to rely my life on it, would I? I would if it was the only thing, but if I had the option, I wouldn't. So with that said, I'm going to bring you to the second knife that I got. Excuse me. And it is one of my absolute favorite knives, and it is my favorite knife company now because of what they make. So Mora is really cheap and they make a good product, but if you're keeping in the realm of bushcraft, full tang, quality steel, quality materials, then you really should look no further than Condor. A lot of people have problem with Condor. Oh, they don't arrive sharp, or you know, there was a defect or what have you. One of your bushcrafting skills really should be how to sharpen a knife. They do come sharp. They don't come razor sharp like a Mora, but they're sharp enough to get the job done right out of the box. They might not be razor sharp, but they are sharp enough. All you do is you just sharpen it and you'll get razor sharp very quickly. This did not come with this this lanyard. I made this, you know, because I'm a weirdo. It also did not come with this carabiner. I made this as kind of a makeshift dangler to hang on my belt. This is the Condor Bushlore. Now, this is one of their most popular knives. They sell tons of these things. They come in walnut handle or micarta handle. They have brass rivets. It's 1075 high carbon steel, and a lot of people complain about that. Oh, it's not 1095, da 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 da. Well, I've seen so many reviews with the difference between the two metals, and I've used this and 1095, and I don't notice any difference. This thing, you can beat the crap out of it, and it will just keep on kicking. Full tang construction. Pretty thick blade, considering. I mean, it's not the thickest blade, but you really don't want a super thick blade, or you're not going to be able to do some crafts or some tasks. This blade, or this handle, is one of the most comfortable handles out there in the game. 55 bucks for this. Now, to put it in perspective, there are knives out there that use similar everything that you see here that are 3 times as much, 4 times as much. And like, why? Why go spend, $300 on a knife that you're gonna beat up the same way that you're gonna beat up a $55 knife that's just as nice? I mean, there's some things, it doesn't come super razor sharp. I had to sharpen my own. It's razor sharp now. I love the Bush lore. It's inexpensive, it's high quality. All of Condor knives are made in El Salvador. I do believe that they used to be in Germany or some other place. Let me pull up, I have a little piece of paper here. Yeah, in Germany. 1787 is when they can trace their roots back to, as a different name. And they moved to El Salvador. They took some people with them to El Salvador, which makes the products really cheap. And one cool thing about El Salvador is they make dang good sheaths. This sheath, I mean, look at this thing. That sheath is just exquisite. It's a high quality leather sheath. Look at the welt on that. The only gripe I would have is that I wish they would have sewn the belt loop on, because if those rivets ever did fail, well, there's nothing to hold them back up. I have never heard of or ever seen anybody talk about how Condor's rivets come out and you're left with no knife. If the bush lore fits beautifully in there, really snug, it'll probably loosen up over time, but that's fine. I'm not doing backflips while I'm wearing this knife. Now, with that being said, this is not my favorite belt knife. I have actually fallen in love with another knife, as of recent, about a week ago, that is almost exactly like the Bush lore. And that is the Condor, again Condor, Cave Lore. This knife, man, is absolutely beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. It is quite literally the Bush lore, but they've just done some adjustments to it to kind of give it a Neolithic feel. Which for some reason, when I just look at this knife, I get this primal instinct. I just want to use it. I just want to, and it is nice. Now, for those of you complaining about the 1075 steel, this is 1095. This is what you've been asking for. Condor 1095 high carbon steel. Burnt hickory handles. There's rivets underneath that are holding the blade to the scales. It's brass wire wrapped. There is a hidden lanyard hole in the back that comes with this nice little leather thing. It has this design on the blade that's supposed to give it the appearance of either being hammered steel or flinted, like a flint rock, if you will. This one came pretty dang sharp. I was impressed. It's Scandi grind, which you want a Scandi grind when you're doing bushcraft. I should have mentioned that earlier. Pretty much all of my hip knives are Scandi grind, except the Bear Grylls, which... So Scandi grind basically is you have the blade coming down, and then there's an angle where it goes to a point. Each side of the blade makes a point. Let's see if I can get a shot of that. Probably not. It's basically like it's just a perfect point. And that really lends well for carving wood and doing everything. And with this specific knife, I've heard people say, oh, I bet you those are hot spots. I've used this knife extensively and I have had no problems. None. This knife is so comfortable. It is amazing. And You can strike a ferro rod with the back of that blade, no problem. I'd say probably a little bit harder to do with the back of the blade than the regular bush lore, but I mean, it still works. You know, I'd say 3 out of 4 times I'm shooting sparks, whereas the bush lore, 4 out of 4. But for me, everything else about this is just absolutely beautiful. I love the way it looks. I love the way it feels in my hand. It's got the same bush lore style handle, except made out of burnt hickory instead of walnut. Everything is the same as the bush lore, except this is the cave lore. So I get the functionality of the bush lore with the beauty of that bad boy. And I don't know what it is about looking at this knife, but it makes me just happy. Something about it. And then the sheath is pretty cool too. It's got this like perfectly molded old style sheath with the stitching up the back, and then it's got like this kind of leather belt hanger, which is actually really comfortable. It's like a dangler. And it feels pretty secure. It fits in there really nicely. Stays in there. I mean, this thing ain't coming out. Very, very nice knife. I absolutely love this knife. This is my go-to knife now. It's just the way it is. And it's not because of the steel. It's not because it's 1095. Honestly, it's because it's everything the bush lore is, but a little nicer. I mean, it just has a certain appeal to it. And it, if I remember correctly, it was not much more expensive than the bush lore. For me, it was worth it. Now, my everyday carry knife to finish this up is a neck knife. That's basically what we're getting down to. I have changed from a folding pocket knife to a neck knife, and it is again Condor. It is the Condor Otzi knife. This little guy is quite literally the cave lore miniaturized, but it was first. It came before the cave lore, or the cave lore. So it comes with this braided leather neck strap, so you can put it on your neck. Beautiful sheath, similar style to the cave lore. This is the Otzi. Now, if you know anything about Otzi, it was a man they found in the Italian something border. I can't remember the other country, but they found him frozen in the ice, and with him he had a bunch of tools. I mean, he was so well preserved that they could actually tell you what he ate last by looking at the contents of his stomach. But with him he had a bunch of tools, one of which was a knife. It was a flinted knife with a wood handle, and it was wrapped, and his sheath had braided grapevine, or it was just grapevine. Regardless, it was a really cool find for these people, and so Condor didn't make a replica. Condor made a tribute, and in fact, the Condor Otzi, the Condor Cave Lore, and the Condor Bush Lore are all designed by Joe Flowers of Condor. Some of my favorite Condor designs are by Joe Flowers. There's just something about the beauty of them mixed with the price that I really, really, really enjoy. So like, I am a Condor fanboy, and I don't really care. But anyways, this is the Otzi. It is pretty much a miniature cave lore, so it fits really nicely into this sheath. Pull it out, and it is that. Look at the beauty of that thing. This thing is crazy sharp too. It came sharp, and then I just polished it up a little bit, if you will, and it is, I mean, I could shave with this if I could grow facial hair. It is not full tang, but it pretty much is. It's got a slightly tapered tang inside that fits right into this handle, and it's epoxied in there and then wrapped with these brass wires. So this is not something that I'm gonna beat with. This is like something I would skin with, do very light carving. Anytime I just need a pocket knife, I got this, you know, and it fits really nicely into the sheath. It can go in a shirt, it can go out of a shirt. I love this knife. I literally get up in the morning and I put this knife around my neck. It's just what I do, you know, and if I'm going out, I'm taking both of these. this one around my neck, this one on my hip. This one I'll beat up a little. You know, I'll baton wood, I'll do some carving, I'll do all that kind of stuff with it. This one is the finer tasks. It's got, like I said, burnt hickory handles, brass wrapped handle. It's 1095 high carbon steel with the same design as the Kevlar. I love this little guy. I don't know what it is about it. There's something about this style of knife, this primitive design, this like raw materials, the nice sheath that just, I absolutely love. So I guess that's my review on all of these knives. I've just been yapping about them. I really love Condor knives. My next one I want to get is the Condor Huron. It's kind of similar to the Kevlar. It's got you know, a piece of brass wrapped handle, but then it's got rivets on the farther side of the blade or the handle. It's a very nice knife too, but it's a little different. That'll probably be my next one, and then the primitive Sequoia will probably be another one I want to get. That thing is massive and it's got a cool design on the blade, and it's 1095 steel. I think that one's Joe Flowers too. Something about Joe Flowers and Condor I just can't get over. So if I'm going on a long trip or something, chances are I'm just gonna bring all of them because I'm weird. You know, this will just be attached to the outside of my pack, this will be on my hip, this will be on my neck, and this will just be in my backpack. You know, if for some reason this fails me, I have a backup, or if I want to do something really crazy and I don't want to abuse this knife so much, I'll use this one, but I'm not afraid to abuse this one. It's just, I like it a lot. So I'll just take all four of those knives with me. This weighs practically nothing. I hardly notice it anymore. The Kevlar is so non-intrusive on my belt. It's crazy. Highly recommend Condor knives if you're just getting into bushcraft. If you don't have, you know, $55, $70, whatever for a Condor knife, which save for it, they're worth it. Then just get a Mora. This knife has nothing wrong with it. Nothing wrong at all. It's a great knife. Just be careful. You don't want to beat this up too much, but if you do and it breaks, it's 15 bucks, you know. But you're not breaking this. You're not breaking this. Not easily, at least. So, well, that's pretty much all I can say about these knives. The Otzi, the Kevlar, the Mora Companion, and the Condor Bushlore are my favorite knives right now. You know, folding knives, I just don't anymore with doing bushcraft. It's just, there's too many things that could fail. With the Bear Grylls knife, I don't like Bear Grylls or most of the stuff he attempts to teach people about survival because it's dangerous and incorrect. And overall, the knife is okay. It comes with a lot of, you know, little bonus features, but just get a good knife and learn how to use it. Be safe, and well, I'll see you next time.